Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today I have the distinct pleasure of talking to Sarah Tudzin of Illuminati Hotties. Of all the new artists I've come across in the past couple of years, she's right up there at the top of the list. And her third album, Let Me Do One More, is one of the standout releases of 2021. Now, I'm not alone in thinking that. As I'm sure you've noticed, the album has been getting all kinds of big love from big name publications, and deservedly so. Tudzin is one of those people who can do it all. She can write a hooky melody that sticks in your head and makes you sing along. She creates artistic, distinctive songs that stand out from the crowd. She writes clever, thoughtful lyrics that work on multiple levels. And she has a technical skill to bring all those ideas out in the studio by producing and engineering her own work. Bottom line, Let Me Do One More is a great album. And it's actually a really fun album, too, which is sort of surprising, given that she made it after some personal and professional hardships, including a death in her close family and the collapse of her former record label. It's a long story, but recently Tudzin and I chatted about the year she's had, her songwriting process, and plenty more. Here's how it went. Hello.
What's up? How's it going?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good, good.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Is it Tinnitist or Tinnitist?
It is Tinnitist. Is it Tudzin or Tudzin?
Tudzin.
Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way. Um, so congratulations, first of all, on finally getting this album out. It must be especially great after all the stuff you had to go through to get to this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Do you think of this as your second album or your third album now?
I would say it's my third album. I think the second album, Free IH, would suffice as an album. I think, it was called a mixtape categorically, but it's still 11 or like 10 or 11 songs total.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I would
No, it
call it,
fits the
I would
bill.
call
I
this
just
my
thought,
third.
maybe because of the sort of contractual obligation element to it that you were kind of, redheaded stepchilding it, putting it in the closet.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Okay, okay. I mean, in the title of this album, I'm guessing that was kind of your prayer mantra for the past little while.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that for a long time I couldn't really decide on an album title, um and I think like recording and life and really everything is all about just like hoping you can squeeze one more of whatever in, and like, just ask for that extra mile from all of your life experiences. And it kind of like occurred to me as I was listening through the album and trying to figure out sequence order and everything, like right at the end of the last tune, I say that into the microphone, and I
Yeah,
hear that over and over again from artists. Um, and it felt very like Nilsonian to me also as a title. So, in that way, I loved it. It's classicness about it.
totally. Well,
Yeah.
was there a point though during all the crappiness when you kind of doubted that you might be able to, do this again, or was it just a matter of wading through it all?
Yeah, it was just a matter of wading through everything and figuring out how to do this better the next time around, and how to uh value my own work and take care of myself in that way. Um so, I don't think that it would have ever been the end of me. I just think that I had to figure out how to move through everything with the concessions given.
And I mean, were there changes you can talk about in terms of that, taking care of yourself better and looking after yourself better? And, were there specific things you can point to as lessons learned from the whole debacle?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just know more about releasing music, and I know more about how um my music is received, and like how I want to uh I guess like protect my work and realize that it's like has value in the world, which is awesome and unexpected, I think. And when I first put out music, I wasn't really thinking. I don't think I knew even what to think about that. I think I just said yes and was excited to have someone on board, and like continued moving forward, and I didn't really expect that to change until the whole sort of like call out situation happened. Um so honestly, I just know more of like what to look out for and who to talk to, and how to sort of make sure my music is, and my, personhood and band is best represented.
Right. And I mean, I guess that's part of the reason for starting your own label now, right? And then just licensing the stuff out, it makes more sense. You own it.
Yeah.
It's okay. So, are these songs all old songs, or are they all new songs, or is there a
I
mix and stuff?
There's definitely a mix, I think a lot of it was written like at the towards the end of 2019, and like sort of finished up um over the course of being on and off tour for that whole year. And then I did sort of like the end bits and pieces
Hmm.
through 2021, just sort of doing final vocals or extra guitar parts, sending it to get mixed by Colin, um, getting all the final pieces together through the end of 2020, and like all the logistic stuff of like putting it out with Hopeless and under my imprint, and just kind of squaring away all the details. But a lot of these songs at this point are older. I didn't really add anything. I came in with a pretty hefty to-do list of songs to finish when I first started tracking Let Me Do One More. And so I just kind of ran with that, and anything I've written since then is just, you know, back pocket songs for whatever the next thing could be.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about the recording and writing approach, because I mean, it seems to me that you kind of almost took you have a sort of a different trajectory to your creative and artistic pathway than a lot of people do. I mean, you sort of got into it more working in studios than playing in a band, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I am a musician also, and I played in
Yeah.
bands my whole life and have been sort of writing songs my whole life. But what really started to interest me, like as I was thinking about my career in music, and
Career. I
what
was
I
going to go
wanted to, yeah,
career.
exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to like sort of make a name for myself and pay my rent and, grocery bills. And um and that was all sort of in the studio realm.
Right.
That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I was really interested in studying in college, and continuing once I moved back to LA. So yeah, I think that uh, it sort of was unexpected, but in the end, now that it's approximately like 50% of my life and my business, it's really, I love it.
So was it just that, you kind of went, okay, well, I've done the band thing and I might do it, sometime again, but this pays the bills, this pays the rent, this is a good thing, I love doing it, but you just couldn't kind of stop? You know what I mean? There was always another song plunking into your head that you went, oh, I'll just record this at home. And then all of a sudden, I've got an album's worth and I should have a band. Was it that sort of?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
kind of. I mean, I think that I finally sort of like got to a point where I had a collection of songs that all fit together in a way that like needed some different packaging, I guess, so to speak. Like I didn't want to put it out like under my own name, because it was like kind of a more like rock feeling outfit. And so I was like, like that should have like a band name, even if it's me. It should
Hmm.
feel like a band playing the songs.
Right.
And I really just sort of like, once I had settled on like a collection of songs that I felt fit nicely together, I produced them out as if I was like producing an artist that wasn't myself, and just kind of like wanted to have more material to show bands who were interested in working in the studio with me. It was cool to be able to be like, yeah, I engineered that, or I mix assisted on that, like, but I wanted like, something that really felt like me working at my, highest potential to show people.
Right. Now, again, talking about the way you write songs, I mean, first of all, I love it because you've got great songs and then you've got the great production. And I'm wondering how much the sort of studio element of it enters into you during the songwriting process, or is it kind of a bifurcated thing where you sit down with your guitar or whatever and write your song, and then when you take it into the studio, it kind of goes through another whole evolution? Or are you thinking in terms of the finished product that we're hearing right from the beginning as you're writing?
It mostly feels bifurcated. I would say that's like 90% of the songs are written. Um, I want them to be good songs, and I want to be able to just play them down on guitar or on keyboard or whatever and have that function just as good as it would, just as well as it would in a studio setting. So then it sort of gets another like polish up once I'm in record mode. Um, I will say there's like a few songs I think that I've written that I sort of have the production in mind and I know how I want it to feel, or like um I want to like try out a trick and I'm like I need a song to try that out on. So like I think there's a few songs that kind of live in that world, but for the most part, um it's about finishing a song and then taking it to the studio. And I don't really do demos. Like I'm not really into demoing. I feel like as soon as I touch the computer or the tape machine or whatever, like I'm thinking about keeper tracks and like taking that to the end of the recording process. Like, I mostly, as far as like demo world goes, would just like record what I'm playing and singing on guitar into a voice note in my phone or something. And then once I get into recording mode, I'm tracking for the purposes of keeping it and for the purposes of making a full song. And for some reason, just like the demo process has always eluded me or felt like an extra step that I don't need to take, since I'm not, showing where I'm at writing wise to another producer. I'm just coming out of my brain and imagining it in real time.
Well, that's interesting because when I was listening to these songs, one of the things that struck me about them is they feel really live and immediate, and they don't feel fussed over. They live in the moment, and even down to a lot of the production and things where I'm going, wow, the track really takes a sort of a left turn here, and something comes in. I mean, where do those things come from? I mean, are they just sort of happy accidents in the studio? Because there's a lot of things on these tracks where I go, how did you think to put this here?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is happy accidents, a lot of it is intentional. I would say that anytime an accidental thing happens, um, I then will take that and use it intentionally. Like I think it is rather fussed over. So it's interesting to hear that. I know some bands go in the studio and just play down the songs and whatever the best performances and whatever like the most appropriately captured performances under the microphones ends up being the record. And I think that the way that I produce these songs, at least, I really do go into the woods and pull stuff apart and find those like little weird moments and put them appropriately around a song.
Are you somebody who's walking around all the time with a tape recorder, taping stuff?
Occasionally, I've always wanted to be better at that. I think that's a really fun way to capture sounds. And I will say that it it's a little bit like I would rather be writing stuff down, as I'm walking around. I think I observe the world more in ways where I'm like writing lyrics and capturing little pieces of things that way. Um, but in the studio, you have the great luxury of having microphones on at all times. And so I think like that's where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Mm,
Or if I have like an idea of like some kind of found audio that I want in a track, then I'll go,
right.
to a party and hit record on my phone or whatever.
Okay. So talking about, you that these songs are basically what other people might have used as demos, but for you, they're tracks in progress, as it were. So aren't like 10 alternate versions of Pool Hopping sitting in a hard drive somewhere or nothing like
Yeah,
that.
not really. It's
Okay.
kind of like it just goes from like voice note in my phone. Like I'm sure there's a version of pool hopping that's just me singing and playing a guitar, or like perhaps I recorded the guitar first and just sang the lyrics over it so I had something for drums and bass to play along to. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not making comprehensive demos in the way that some
Right.
people do, where they sort of like have an idea of what they want production wise, and then they show that to a producer, and the producer
But you're
takes
not
it the
even
full
you're
mile.
not even going, okay, that version that we started with, let's try it again. I mean, are you sort of is there kind of a commitment you make in terms of, okay, this is the song and this is going to be the song, and unless it all goes off the rails and falls apart, we're keeping this version?
Yeah, at some
Okay.
point for sure. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm just, when I'm working on a song, I just am focused on best servicing that song. And I think that some songs definitely have taken a few different forms just because I tried something and I saw it through to the end and it didn't really work. Um, but a lot of songs are just sort of like moving pieces. And there's, if you look back through Pro Tools sessions, maybe the third saved version looks completely different than the 12th one, but it's all just sort of moving in like a amoeba like shape.
Cool. I love that. Talking about the crappy stuff of the past years that sort of came before this album. I mean, it's kind of funny because to me, this album is there's a lot of upbeat pop on this. It's very vibrant and very colorful, and it's not somebody sort of, being pissed off or I mean, did you have a sort of stylistic game plan going in, or what kind of contributed to the upbeat quality and tone of so much of this album?
I would say a lot of it came from, cutting my teeth on the road. I think that once myself and the band were playing a lot more and touring, we toured basically for all of 2019, from the end of 2018 basically through the end of 2019. And like, I think that a lot of what went into making this album like that was I was thinking about how it would track on stage, and I learned what worked in front of a crowd and what the band liked to play, and I think that definitely informed some of the style of this record. And also just wanting to try different stuff and wanting to stretch my production skills and my songwriting skills. Um, and yeah, just make a new universe. And I sort of went into the studio with like 25 or 30 song ideas basically. And some were full songs, like, like I feel like some songs start to finish were done. Some songs were just a verse and a chorus idea, or like was like the form of a song with chords but no lyrics. And I just wanted to track drums and bass and basic guitars on like as many of those ideas as I could. And like little by little, naturally songs that weren't working right or whatever would fall off the list one by one. But I tried to take as many of them to the end of the road as possible. Which, at the end of the day, that was more like, I don't know, 16 or 17 that actually were finished or were even close to getting ready to send a mix. And some ideas are just fully not finished, and some probably will never be finished. But yeah, that was a part of it too. I don't think I went in being like, this is the style, as much as I went in being like, here's all the songs I have, like what's going to fit together best and what's going to be fun to work on, what's going to inspire me to keep working through.
Well, I mean, it all hangs together great, and pool hopping to me is just one of the I've had it stuck on repeat in my head for days. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Thanks.
And I hope you
And
take
sorry.
it. No apology necessary. I hope you take this as a compliment it is intended as. It's the best song the Go-Go's never wrote, I think.
Thanks.
I mean, I hear a lot of 80s and 90s bits on this album. I mean, is that sort of your go-to, because you're not really old enough to have been around for this music? So I'm wondering what you were maybe listening to, or where some of this influence comes from.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I try to listen to as much music as possible because I feel like that's a big part of my job, is just knowing the roadmap. And I'm sure that just over the course of listening to anything I can get my hands on, I've pulled out the cool moments that stuck out to me and tried to like reinterpolate that into my own production style. And I think whether on purpose or on accident, definitely like 80s and 90s stuff lives in those songs. And uh, also what my friends are working on or listening to, and what the people around me or the people I admire are influenced by. I feel like that stuff all sort of sneaks in.
All right. So when you're in the studio working on something, does Sarah, the musician, ever fight with Sarah, the producer, in your head over something, or does it all kind of work out? I mean, obviously it all
Um,
works out in the end, but
yeah, I think the only fight I would have with myself is that I wish I was a little better at just knocking stuff out quickly. Like, I think that my production ears go further than my musical chops at times, and I would like to, I hope, I'm not sure those will ever catch up. And luckily, as a producer, I've, found the musicians that I really trust to interpret what I'm thinking and play it better than I can in some cases. And in some cases, it's just easier to grab the instrument and, barrel my way through it and edit it together in the right way. But yeah, I think that's the only fight I would have with myself, is sort of like being upset that I am not following through on the playing.
oh, you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah.
You send them out to be mixed, you said? You don't mix them yourself?
I don't mix them myself. If I did, no one would ever hear them. I would just take way too long. And so I kind of exclusively mix other people's projects. So my friend Colin Pastor, who mixed Kiss Your Frenemies, also mixed Let Me Do One More, and as well as many songs that didn't make it to the end of Let Me Do One More. And yeah, I trust him with everything. He's been a great sounding board like through my whole songwriting lifetime, I guess, and he, as well as Jacob Blizzard, I trust more heavily than I would other musicians, I think, with this project.
Are you still doing studio work for other people? Is that still part of
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, that was the main thing for the last year, as we were all sort of stuck inside. And also in between tours, I'd always been doing that. And I was Chris Cody's engineer for a few years, which was really awesome and taught me so much. And since touring really picked up, and since freelance work really picked up, I've been just freelancing and producing other people's records, writing on other people's records. Occasionally, if someone just needs tracking engineer, I'll hop in, but mostly been sticking to production and mixing, and really sort of taking an album from start to finish with other bands.
Are there any projects that you're working on right now that you'd like to mention, aside from obviously your own album?
I mean, I'm not sure what's necessarily publicly announced yet of what I've been working on, but I will, like the Pom Pom Squad record that came out over the summer. I did that in November 2020 with them in New York, and that's sort of the latest and greatest that's been released, I would say.
And are you ever sitting there behind the board listening to somebody else's stuff and going, shit, that is so good. I wish I wrote that.
Definitely. I mean, my whole life, I feel like I'm constantly hearing music that I'm either working on or that I just, that someone will release. And I'm like, man, like, I really wish I wrote that. And I think that's just, the pitfalls of being a songwriter and a producer, is being like, man, like somebody thought of that thing before I did, and it's awesome.
Yeah. If you had to do one, if they said, okay, enough of this, you gotta pick one, musician or producer.
I mean, I don't think I could pick. I definitely love both, and both feed each other, and both sides of the job like make it possible for me to live and work and tour and keep doing what I want to do with music.
Yeah. What do you do when you're not working?
It's not often. I definitely have a workaholism tilt. I got a dog over the pandemic, so
right.
I feel like that's been taking up my time, hanging out.
Oh, you
Fine.
you're back. You're back. That's okay.
Okay, cool.
Just say what you said after you got a dog during the pandemic.
Oh, just, keeping her happy, walking her. I moved in May 2020, so exploring my new neighborhood a little bit. That's been keeping me busy.
So you just decided to totally upend your life completely as if it wasn't upended enough already by everything else going on. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, moving was good, dog was good, although that felt like it was upending my life for about a month, and then we both know each other. Now it's awesome.
Cool. Well, now that then you have to, they'll make accommodations when you go back on the road, right?
Yes, definitely. I'm lucky that, my folks live in town, so hopefully, if I can't find a friend to hang out with her, then hopefully my dad will hang out with her.
Oh, are you from Los Angeles originally?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Then, so did you go to school out there for this, or did you go somewhere east?
I went to Berkeley in Boston
Oh,
for
okay,
school. Yeah.
cool, excellent. What year was that?
That was 2011 through 2014.
Hmm. Excellent. All right. So
Yeah.
you said you've already got what, a bunch of the next album written, or at least songs that might be on the next album?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure
Mhm.
yet. I think that I'm always writing and I'm always collecting songs, and I have sort of like a dream of like how I want the next record to sound, or like what universe I want it to be in. But I haven't started saying like, yes, this song is a track on the album for sure. I've mostly just been trying to create in like a really natural way.
Right. Does other art you experience in your life start to influence what you're doing? I mean, if you're reading, some author, do you start to sort of think in their words, or are inspired by what they're writing about, or other music you're listening to? Does it all seep in, or are you sort of your own little island?
Oh, I definitely take in as much as I can. I think with art, getting input is as important as doing output, and so I really do try and absorb a lot. And if I just tried to start from scratch every single day, like, I don't think my songs would be very exciting, and it's really much more exciting for me to sort of compile all the stuff in the brain soup and hope that the good stuff seeps out.
Is there anything on this album that you want to admit to, being influenced by, or would you rather keep that in your pocket?
I think that it's sort of hard to pull out the influence. I mean, I would love to admit that I'm stealing stuff, because I think that that's like one of the most fun things about art. But it's hard to sort of like do that without listening to it. Like, I feel like when I listen to the songs, I know exactly where I took what thing from,
Mhm.
and uh but then zooming way out, or just thinking about it without sort of like having it in my ears, I think it's
Right.
hard to say like, oh yeah, that song is this.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah.
So I guess you're looking forward to getting back out and playing again. How are you going to do that logistically in terms of, everything?
I think, we're doing some shows with Death Cab this month, which I'm really
Right.
excited about, and they're being really serious about COVID precautions. We've got to do the take home tests before every show. We got to do tests before we leave. We have to do tests when we land, and we have to obviously submit, proof of vaccination and all that stuff. And we're sort of not supposed to interact with the audience, or in the
Right.
we're basically maintaining a bubble for those shows, and I think that's kind of the only way to do it, if especially, Death Cab is continuing to do shows after those three, um and so they need to stay healthy, and so do
Right.
we.
Yeah, exactly. So do you have kind of a long-term goal or plan or for any of this, or is it just, do one more and then do one more?
I mean, I think that's mainly the plan, is to just keep doing it, and keep working at it, and keep working with other musicians that I love, and that's definitely the yeah, that's as much as a plan as I can give you. I think
Good
like
enough.
uh yeah.
Well, these days, what more can you plan, right?
Yeah.